most of the times we start paying attention to our health when it's punishing us, when our bodies are punishing us. And that is a serious problem, because by the time the body is giving you a sign, by the time you're getting that silent or mini stroke or whatever the condition that you're getting, by the time you're getting hypertension, by the time you're being diagnosed of diabetes, this did not start yesterday. And this is the problem. The problem is most of you start thinking that because you're diagnosed with diabetes today, this must have started yesterday. So you start thinking, what did I do wrong yesterday? And that's the reason why even people who I'm taking through health journey, when they start experiencing a difference in their lives or a difference in their health and their body is responding positively, the question will be, doctor, I'm feeling this. Why? What am I doing wrong? So your mindset is even skewed. You're always thinking for the negative. Like if anything happens to you, it must be for the wrong reason. It must be for the wrong reason. This is the reason why the health system can exploit you so easily, because you're already coming with a negative thought. I put up a video telling you that most of you will walk into a consultation room with a lot of Google information. So already you even have a diagnosis, and you know very well, if you go to Google and try to find out a symptom of any disease, believe me, the diagnosis that comes on Google is a serious one. It's very scary. It's not an interesting one. So by the time you're coming out of Google and walking into that consultation room to ask that doctor questions, of course, asking doctors questions is perfect because we want that. We want you to do that. We want you to consume healthcare when you are so sane. But when you're coming with the Google information and all you're doing is you're trying to challenge the doctor to just suit into your schedule of Google, that is wrong. That is wrong. You're supposed to go there with an open mind. You go there to understand things. When you think you have not found proper clarification, seek it. Ask them, ask the doctor, why are you saying this? Why am I starting on this medication? What is any other alternative? What is my disease? Please interpret these lab results for me. What symptoms should I expect? How will I even survive? Am I supposed to take these drugs for a lifetime? If not, how long? What is the cause of this disease? Can we be able to target the cause instead of treating any other thing? Because most of the times, health system focus on the symptoms. So now listen to me keenly. Now, this is where you open up your notebook, you take your pen and sit back and enjoy the lecture. Good. So now listen. This is a blood vessel. So this is our blood vessel, and it's a major blood vessel carrying blood from the heart all the way to different organs, right? So you can see there it's going to the brain. You can see there it's going to the same heart. So yes, through the coronary supply. And then so we are using this to just demonstrate what is basically happening. So you have brain, you have the heart, you have, of course, the extremities, the legs and the hands. And then now, of course, we are taking blood to the lungs. So this blood has nutrients, has oxygen, has literally every single thing that you need for survival. So these organs basically need oxygen, they need nutrients, they need immune cells just in case there is a problem. The immune cells can actually heal that problem. Good. Whenever you're seeing the blue, the circles, those are your red blood cells. And whatever you're seeing that is in orange, that is basically sugar. So I'm using that. Please take time to observe that diagram, then I explain it. So we have the blue circles that are representing the red blood cells, and then we have the orange circles that are representing actually the sugar. So perfect. If you see that blood vessel is a major blood vessel that is supplying different organs in the system. So this is what is happening. So this is that blood vessel. Now this blood vessel, inside here we have red blood cells, we have white blood cells, the immune cells, we have all those cells, right? But I keep warning you against the 3 foods that are very toxic to you. Number 1, of course, for all of you who know the 3 foods, you can mention it in the comment section. I don't have to mention it all the time. But if you've been on this channel, you already know what types of foods are highly inflammatory and you should stay away from them. So this is the blood vessel, and blood is flowing to different organs. And I warn you all the time against this food that is called sugar. The enemy is always sugar. And when we talk about sugar, we are talking about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Those are the sugars. So when I'm talking about sugar, I'm not only talking about sugar that you put in tea. No. I'm talking about the milk. I'm talking about the sugar that is coming in with the chapati, with the bread, with the ugali. So I'm talking about all these sugars, okay? So now, this blood vessel has a thin layer of cells on the wall. And that thin layer of cells is what we call the endothelial lining. So this wall here has a very thin layer of cells that are called the endothelial cells, basically forming a smooth lining so that blood flows into that vessel easily and softly. Okay? But that endothelial lining is what is actually targeted by the reactive oxygen species that come from seed oils. Rewind and let's talk about this seed oil. Seed oils are called polyunsaturated fatty acids. The word is poly. Poly means more or multiple. Unsaturated means double bonds. So when I say polyunsaturated, I mean multiple double bonds. Tuko pamoja? So when I mean multiple double bonds, so they are polyunsaturated. Now it means they have multiple double bonds in their structure. Now, these double bonds, all of you know, if you sat in a chemistry class, you understood that double and triple bonds are the most unstable bonds. But the single bond is the stable one. So therefore, the single bond actually pulls the carbon atoms closer to each other and becomes very stable. So it's difficult to break. If it's difficult to break, it means it does not harbor any idle electrons. Now, do you remember those two electrons that were being carried on a double bond? Because now we have two electrons on that double bond that are just there, easy to manipulate. If you put heat on it, they get excited. If you apply the sun, basically you expose it to the sun, they get excited and they oxidize. The phenomenon that was called rancidity. Do we remember rancidity? Class. Do you remember rancidity? So yes, they oxidize. So when they oxidize, they form the reactive oxygen species. These are basically the ones that are dangerous to your system because they initiate inflammatory processes. Now, those ROS, I'll call them ROS because they are reactive oxygen species. They come on this layer, on this endothelial lining. Remember the endothelial lining? So when they come on this endothelial lining, what they do is they start corroding it. They corrode it and they cause inflammation. And I will tell you why it's very dangerous to take these seed oils plus sugar plus wheat. And those people who like taking cakes, a combination of sugar and wheat, the most dangerous one. But we will talk about the wheat. So when it comes to that layer and starts to corrode it, remember one, that endothelial lining was making blood flow into that blood vessel smoothly. Number two, it was actually causing somehow a thick wall here, right? Like a thick wall. So when it comes to corrode it, that layer, that wall starts to thin. Now, as that layer thins, and imagine you're having an increased blood pressure. So blood is being pumped into this blood vessel at a higher pressure. So if you're thinning this blood vessel wall, guess what is going to happen? Chances of that blood vessel wall rupturing are very high. But then how are we getting the high blood pressure? Let's take it back to the sugar, okay? Just hold back the thought on the seed oil. So in this blood vessel, we have red blood cells that are attaching to sugar. Now remember, sugar is a very sticky substance, very sticky. So as sugar and the red blood cells start settling on this blood vessel wall, remember that seed oil that you're eating that came and corroded this blood vessel wall? It is actually making it easier because of the friction. It makes it easier for the cells to settle there and stick there. Now, as they settle and stick on that, basically the wound, I'll put the wound in quotes, okay? That wound that was being formed, the inflammation. They settle there and they start attracting other cells. They start attracting other cells. Remember, they are sticky. And I always use the phenomenon of tea. You put sugar in tea and you pour it on the table. You leave it for about 30 minutes and come back and touch that table. What happens on that table? For those of you who love tea, the fans of tea, anytime you put a lot of sugar in your tea and then it happens to pour itself, or you pour it on the table and leave it for about 15 minutes or 30 minutes and come back and touch that table, what happens? Very, very sticky, right? This is the same concept that is being measured by HbA1c test. It is called the glycation test. So it measures how much sugar is attached to your red blood cells and how sticky they are. Now, having understood that, when they settle here and because of the friction of that wound, they stick there, they start attracting other cells. And now guess what is happening in the blood vessel wall? Let me explain it easily. So in that blood vessel wall, now these cells are settling down and they start attracting other cells. They start attracting other cells. So whatever is happening here is we are building a mass in the blood vessel wall, in the blood vessel, sorry. So we are building a mass in the blood vessel. Now this mass is actually going to form somehow something like that in the blood vessel. So look at it this way. This was the initial diameter, right? And now this is the new diameter. So what happened to that? There was a reduced diameter. It's now starting to narrow. And since this blood is flowing from the heart all the way to other organs, this lump is actually forming even in these organs because sugar is all over. It's forming in these blood vessels. So what is going to happen is now you're narrowing the blood vessel diameter, and therefore the force that the heart has to pump blood through this blood vessel has to increase. Now, as the force is increasing because the heart has to pump blood through that narrowing blood vessel, as the force is increasing, the heart has to adapt. Anytime you go into a gym and you start lifting for the biceps, what happens? The biceps have to adapt to the new pressure that you're bringing in, the new weights. Therefore, they start to swell, right? So that's an adaptation mechanism. If you stop going to the gym, that bicep will go back to its normal structure or shape. This is the same thing that is happening to your left ventricle of the heart, your left side of the heart. So as the heart is struggling to pump blood through this blood vessel, the left ventricle starts to swell. And guess what? Me being the good doctor, I will now slap you with a word that is called cardiomegaly. Hello, cardiomegaly. Somebody is saying atherosclerosis. You are right. This lump here is what we call the atherosclerosis. So I slap you with a word that is called cardiomegaly. Do you know what cardiomegaly means? My people, do you know what cardiomegaly means? Now that you're there, I'm there, I've done an ultrasound or an MRI or a chest x-ray and I've seen an enlarged side of the heart, and I call you this cardiomegaly. When I tell you this cardiomegaly, even the strongest of all shall fall. Even the strongest of them all will fall to that word, that big word, cardiomegaly. That is basically just telling you the heart is adapting. It's an enlarged heart. Yes, it's adapting to the pressure that is coming with these narrowing blood vessels. Now look at it this way. So now I've scared you with the cardiomegaly term. Now I've forwarded you to different cardiologists and you're doing different tests here and there. And now we are advising you on basically removal or a heart transplant or a heart surgery. Or we give you medications to actually help the heart in pumping blood or recovery processes. Now work with me on this one. Did this heart have a problem? Those of you who are following, did this heart have a problem? If it did have a problem, we would have addressed the problem from the heart. But we saw the heart adapting to the pressure that was being caused by narrowing of the blood vessels. So why are we dealing with the heart instead of dealing with the blood vessels? Why are we dealing with this? And this is just an indicator that your blood vessels are narrowing. Do you see where I start to ask questions? Do you see where I start to ask questions? And I would like you to ask those questions because why are we talking about the heart? The enlarged heart, the left ventricle being larger. Yet the real situation is not this muscle of the heart. It was adapting to this pressure. So why don't we do away with the mass that is developing in these blood vessels instead of focusing on the heart? Hello? Am I the only one dreaming? Am I the only one dreaming here? And that's the reason why people come with a stroke or a near or a mini stroke or a silent stroke. People are diagnosed of heart diseases. People are given medication for hypertension. People are given medication for all this, the strokes and all that. The aspirins to help you in healing and lysing the thrombi that is developing in the blood vessels. But nobody is addressing what caused that lump in the blood vessels, that narrowing of the blood vessels. So we are focusing on the symptoms that came as a result of the narrowing blood vessels, and we are forgetting the reality which is in our diets. Because sugar is sticky, and we know that. We know because we have a test that measures how sticky sugar is, how sticky sugar has caused your red blood cells to become. That is HbA1c. So when we keep on focusing on the symptoms, we are missing out. And you will realize actually a stroke is actually a symptom of this problem in the blood vessels. Because as this mass is forming in the blood vessels, guess what is going to happen? A piece of this will break out, which we call a plaque. It will break out and it will go all the way because it's being pumped all the way. So if it's a bigger one, it will actually occlude the blood flow towards the brain. Okay, because now we have now the capillaries. Now it will block the capillaries of the venules that supply the brain. When it blocks here, there is no blood supply towards the brain. And guess what is happening? Now the brain tissue that is supplied by that blood vessel starts to die, starts to suffer. And stroke is actually an injury to the brain tissue. So as you block blood flow towards the brain, you're denying that tissue oxygen, you're denying it immune cells, you're denying it glucose or energy. And then now what happens is it starts to die. When it starts to die, now you suffer from a stroke. Now, God designed your brain very perfectly. In your brain, we have a lot of blood vessels, right? And the beauty about it is, even if you block one channel of blood flow, let's say you block one capillary, there is always a way that the brain adapts to create new capillaries to just bypass the blocked capillary. How amazing is that? So your body was actually intentionally made to know, to understand that you will mess anyway. Just like same way, the liver, you can mess it for 2/3. It dies 2/3, but it still rejuvenates and gives you a new liver. The brain can actually adapt to the cloggings, to the blocking arteries and venules that are supplying the same brain, sorry. So it's actually going to help you by just generating new capillaries or new veins and arteries, new arteries to just supply that tissue so that it protects you. So actually the body protects us. However, how much do you do to protect the body? You as an individual, what are you doing to protect the same body? The body is protecting you from what you're eating, the seed oils, the wheat products, the sugar. But what are you doing to protect it? Now listen, when that plaque blocks the blood flow towards the brain, that is a stroke. Again, remember, some of these emboli or these clots can easily be lysed. They are destroyed easily. So they can easily break off and they just move on and it's cleared out of the system. So this is the time. Have you ever had somebody telling you they went to for a checkup and they were told from their results, from their echo, from their ECG, or from their the results that are coming from the MRI, they are told you suffered a stroke before. They are asked, have you suffered a stroke before? And they're like, no, I've never suffered a stroke before. I've never suffered a stroke before. Do you know what that means? It means, yes, you suffered a stroke, but you did not even realize it was a stroke. Because that's what we call the silent stroke. And also remember, there's something called TIA, which is called the transient ischemic attack. That is not a stroke. That is basically sometimes blood flow towards the brain is limited, and then you get these episodes of a stroke, these symptoms of a stroke like, and then they disappear within 24 hours. That is not classified as a stroke. That is the TIA, the transient ischemic attack. And most of you get this. You get a blackout, you chew, and then you come back. Most of you do this when you're drinking alcohol. When you get those levels of alcohol in your system and you just chew blackout, then tomorrow you're being told stories and all these. You don't even understand what happened yesterday. So that's a transient ischemic attack. But you're told again, if you have a stroke, an attack of a stroke now, chances of you getting another stroke are very high. That is very true. If at all you've never fixed your diet, you've never prevented the occurrence of another stroke. So you have this brain, okay? Up here we have that mass, that brain mass. And that mass, if you cut your head this way, you divide it into two hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Now, the left hemisphere or the right hemisphere controls the opposite muscles. For example, if you affect the left hemisphere, the right muscles will be affected. So if you're hit by a stroke on the left side of the it's called cerebrum. If you're hit by a stroke this side, the right side becomes paralyzed. If you're hit on the right side, the left side or the left muscles become paralyzed. So that's how it happens. That's how the brain controls things. Now, remember, in your brain, you have several things. You have here, we have the frontal lobe, which is this one. Remember when we were talking about insomnia, we talked about this part of the brain? You remember? My cardiologist asked to use only liquid seed oils to avoid atherosclerosis. Listen to that nonsense. They're still stuck in the syllabus all through. They tell you liquid oil is better than the solid oil. They are messing you up. Somebody's saying medulla. Did we say this medulla when we were talking about the insomnia? Yeah, we say this is the occipital lobe. Of course, the brain is divided into lobes, and those 4 lobes: frontal lobe, and then we have the parietal, then we have the temporal, and then we have the occipital lobe. And all of them have different functions. Those functions, when you get possibly an attack on a specific lobe, you will actually suffer from the symptoms that come as a result of affecting that lobe. For example, the frontal lobe is the one that is responsible for movement, thinking, and executing those executive functions, like thinking, like making decisions. So if you imagine if you got you imagine if you limit blood flow towards the frontal lobe, you become a zombie. Yeah, you become a zombie, my friend. Somebody, yeah? And we said here is where you start storing the memories. Okay, so they told you if they slap you on somebody slaps you this side, you might end up forgetting everything because you knock your head on your brain on the skull and you affect the frontal lobe. So your ability to think just becomes negative. Anyway, this is the frontal lobe, movement and executive functions. We have the parietal lobe that plays a very important role in sensory functions. When you touch a pan and then you have to retract your hand, that is the parietal lobe doing that job for you. And then we have the temporal lobes, these ones here. This one is for hearing, of course, and of course for balance and all that. But again, here we have the memory. Okay. Yeah. So here is where we have the hippocampus. If you're keen in the last lesson, you understand. So hippocampus is here. And then recognition and language. So those people who are very slow in learning a new language, this one here, the temporal lobe is actually affected. So now you know. And then the occipital lobe, the one that is behind here, is for vision. So imagine if you're affected this way, you'll not see. But most of you are thinking because it's vision, it has to be here. This one is for vision, my friend. So if you have blood flow being limited towards either lobe, you will have symptoms that actually come as a result of the function of that lobe. I hope you understand that. Once you understand that, you will know how important diets are, how important dropping that sugar is. There is another thing that I have to touch here that is called the LPS. LPS is the lipopolysaccharides. Now, in your gut, you have a lot of bacteria. Those bacteria are both good and bad bacteria, but the good bacteria keep the bad bacteria in check. And that's why we tell you to eat fermented cabbage, to utilize kefir, and all those probiotics. Now, those bacteria in your gut, what they do is they actually help you maintain the environment, they keep you in, they are first layer of immunity in your gut. And actually 80% of your immune system is in the gut. That's why it's very important for you to fix your gut. So this bacteria in your gut, the bad bacteria, for example, if you're always eating carbohydrates, you develop a lot of bacteria that break down carbohydrates and fibers. So if you're eating bad foods, you develop bacteria that are bad, in quotes. So these bad bacteria, on the surface of their cell wall, they have something that is called lipopolysaccharides. Lipopolysaccharides. There is a lipid there, right? Lipo. Now, and then there's a carbohydrate, of course, a sugar, the polysaccharide. So now, this LPS, the lipopolysaccharides, they have a way of messing up your gut. So they perforate your gut just the same way wheat does. It perforates your gut so that you cannot absorb nutrients in the adequate amounts or optimal amounts. It messes up your immune system generally by just poking up your gut. So these lipopolysaccharides, once they pop up, they destroy the gut wall integrity. They get access to the bloodstream. And since they are lipids, they are bound to LDL, the one that you people call the bad cholesterol. It's not a bad cholesterol. It's actually low density lipoprotein. It is not a cholesterol. It is a vehicle that carries cholesterol. So don't blame. LDL is not a type of cholesterol. It's a vehicle. It also carries the LPS, the lipopolysaccharides, and it ferries them all the way to the endothelial lining. Do you remember when you talk about the endothelial lining? And then the LPS starts corroding the same endothelial lining. So therefore, your gut is very important in recovery from stroke, even a heart disease. Your gut is very important in any health condition. Before you start recovering from that condition, you have to fix the gut. When I tell people to fix the gut, they ask me, how about arthritis? I'm like, what are you saying? Arthritis is an inflammatory condition. You have to fix the gut. Doc, how about my stroke? Why are you even owning a disease? Why are you saying my stroke? The gut has to be fixed for you to recover from stroke, for you to recover from diabetes, for you to recover from asthma, for you to recover from mental health conditions. You do not have an option. You will have to fast. You will have to eat healthy. You'll have to change your cooking oil. So you can imagine how much inflammation is being caused by this bacteria in your gut, the bad bacteria. How much inflammation is being caused in those veins by the seed oils, by the sugar, by the wheat in form of gluten. And now the food industry is very clever, lies to you that now we are making you wheat that is gluten-free. And you, of course, as an addict of wheat, you run to the supermarkets to buy wheat-free, gluten-free wheat, lactose-free milk, sugar-free juice. Ah. Saltless biscuits, sugarless biscuits. Now we have keto bars, keto chocolate bars. As an addict of sugar, you'll always run to take them.